the Mastodon tour was just announced, and Kerry King will be playing on that tour, and so I thought it'd be appropriate to.
Definitely, as Kyle is the bass player in Kerry's band.
Yeah,
is that right?
Kyle Sanders, brother to Troy Sanders, and Mr. Bubbers.
Yeah.
Our last episode. You know, gosh, I didn't even think of that. How cool is that? Troy and Kyle will be, and Darren, all touring together. A couple of things. I'm wearing my Raiders attire. One, because it's Super Bowl Sunday, and
Right. Yeah.
screw the Chiefs. I'm wearing my Raiders stuff.
Fair play.
And then two, Kerry King also would play just like Jeff Hanneman and his Raiders jersey on stage because they're Raiders fans. And then I just want to say one more thing. It's raining out. It's raining outside, so I can't smoke the cigar. But I bought this cigar specifically for this, and I'm bummed I can't smoke it.
Yeah.
It's called El Diablo.
Nice one. Excellent.
Super. Save this for later, I guess.
Save it for a non-rainy day. Well, yeah. I'm wearing what I hope is my most metal t-shirt. It's a design for a festival in Birmingham called the Supersonic Festival, which is very much about heavy music and heavy volume bands like Sono, people like that, Electric Wizard and Divide and Dissolve. And this is a design by a tattooist called Ellie Donlan, who's based in Birmingham, and she does some design work for Supersonic. But the guys who run Supersonic are also the people who run Home of Metal, which is the Black Sabbath-y thing and celebrating the birth of heavy metal in Birmingham to some extent. And also something else that's quite metal that's my Rigs of Doom beanie.
When I was in Atlanta, I saw, I hope I'm not mischaracterizing them, but they were all, when I think of doom metal, I think of those bands. Drifter, oh shoot, now I can't think of the other one. No. Well, and even a little bit The Sword, not necessarily all of it, but some of it, and then Kyle Shutt from The Sword. Maybe you come on the show. We've talked before, but he does Doom Side of the Moon.
Dipping my toes in that water to some degree.
Hey, a band that I just got turned on to, again, by a guy down in Atlanta, a guy named Wade.
Yeah.
Shout out to Wade. Got me into a band called Junior Bruce. Have you heard of them?
Oh, no, don't know the name.
I think I would put them in the Doom category too. Again, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I've been listening to that a lot lately, and it's just, oh man, it's just wonderful. It's delightful. It's really got some cool. It's not complicated stuff,
right?
But man, it really gets you. Kerry King, obviously legend from Slayer, and we want to shout out to Warren Lee, who is on tour with Kerry King now in this new band. I don't know to introduce Kerry King. Really, all I can think about is talking about Slayer. I do know they went through some band name iterations. Kerry King, he's kind of like, he says he doesn't need the fame, but he's like willing to deal with it as opposed to the other members of Slayer who were pretty, especially Jeff Hanneman, very reclusive. And I'm not sure the other members really were really into the fame thing at all. And Kerry's just like, well, someone's got to be out there, and so he'll do it. But I don't think he's got an ego about it. All to say, I don't think he wanted to go with Kerry King. This is my understanding of the band name. But the reason he did, they went through, they're going to do something like Reign of the King or King Reign or something like that. That was one option. And then there was Blood Rain, which was another option. And all the cool names they came up with were taken. So they ended up going with Kerry King only because he liked the logo, which is the K and the K.
Yeah, good logo.
So it is a cool logo.
It really
so
is.
I think that's the only reason he settled on that. I don't think he was like trying to be like, hey, this is me and this is my band. Full transparency, I have heard some of it, but really just the opening riff, which is sick. And all right, well, here we go. We'll listen all the way through and then we'll break it up.
Fantastic. Wow.
There you have it.
That's an onslaught, that is, isn't it?
In my opinion, it's a solid song. The other thing I didn't mention was I think a lot of the music on this, From Hell I Rise, that's the name of what the album's going to be coming out in maybe next month. I can't remember now, March or May, but is leftover from the what do you call it? Leftover from Repentless. I think that's the last Slayer album.
Oh, okay. So they're left over from some Slayer sessions, are they?
Yes.
Okay.
So some stuff Kerry King wrote that didn't make it on the album. So I think folks can expect, and I think we just heard it, some Slayer-esque riffs. I think I don't think there's any apology for that. I think it's, hey, I was in Slayer, and this is the type of stuff I write. And
yeah, absolutely.
Continue on.
Well, you want to keep a hold of those fans you've already got. You want to please your fan base, don't you? For a start off, I know that might sound a little bit cynical, but I don't think it is. I think it's just a continuation, isn't it? And I think that's what a lot of folks do when they have side projects and they do extensions of where they've been in their careers. Mastodon have got lots of side projects, and what I'm thinking is that often they'll do something very similar, or they'll do something which is really quite different. Because like Bran has got Arcadia, which is a synth. I class that as synth metal. I would call that. I don't know whether have you heard any Arcadia?
I don't think I have, which makes me a little bit ashamed because I'm such a diehard Mastodon fan. But I've heard a little bit. Gone is Gone. I'm pretty familiar, as you know, with West End Motel. I love those guys. And then Fiend Without a Face is pretty awesome.
Sure.
But I haven't heard a lot of Arcadia.
No, and then Bill's got a side project, I think, which he's working on at the moment. I think he's in the studio right now, actually, at Ember City.
Primate.
Yeah, Primate. That's the one. Yeah. Are they more? I haven't heard any Primate. Do you know their stuff?
I haven't heard Primate yet, but it's they're playing at the Star Bar where I just was. They benefit later this month. In a few days, I think.
Right.
It's kind of like, oh man, I messed up my timing. I should have went.
Well, I think you can do an Atlanta trip maybe once a year.
I'll go back. Maybe March for Tom Cheshire's birthday, April 1st. He has that benefit there.
I know virtually nothing about Slayer. I'm not a Slayer fan. I've never sat down and listened to their music. I don't own any of their albums. I'm aware of their style, and I'm aware of their position in the pantheon of metal, and it is quite high, isn't it? They've been going for a long time. They've had a lot of personnel changes. People have come and gone, and they've pretty much just driven a path continually, haven't they? Really, through the genre of heavy metal, and just kind of kept that thing going. And to me, I would say, from what I know of them, Kerry King's new band and tracks sound like a continuation, I would say. Very much so.
Yeah. Tell me, do you like it?
Yeah, I liked it. Yeah. As I say, the raw vocals, I've got to kind of cut off, like yourself, if I can understand what's being said and sung, I'm kind of happy with that. And if there's some melodic locking in with the tune, which I think there is on this, that also goes to give me a feeling for the whole thing is coherent. Because often with some of the rawer stuff, I've sometimes found that the music seems to be in one room and the vocals seem to be in another. Do you know what I mean? I don't know whether they always kind of work together necessarily, but as far as the backing track and the instrumentation on this, some stunning playing, There's a nice little bit of whammy pedal on the end of the guitar solo where it goes whoop and takes off. And yeah, good arrangement. It's not just verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. There's some other different bridgey things going on. The drumming is just off the scale, isn't it? You know, that when it goes into double time and he's doing those double bass drum beats, that, can you imagine that coming off a stage? I imagine it would blow your face pretty much. You know, I know it's definitely a metal technique and it's used quite a lot in heavy metal, but man, he can play. But then we've got Kyle Sanders on bass as well, and he's, you know, managing to keep up with that lot, which I've got to admire somebody for being able to do that, you know.
Kerry King, obviously.
Yeah, he's playing. He's the main riffologist, isn't he?
And then,
there is another.
Dumel. Is his last name? Phil Demel. Sorry.
Okay.
Saying his name wrong.
Kerry King handles the vocals, yeah.
Yeah, and Phil Demel, like, it was he played in Machine Head in a band called Violence.
Oh, right, okay.
And the drummer is Paul Bostaff, who's been playing with Slayer for a while. So I think relatively since who's there? Dave Lombardo.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, Dave Lombardo. Yeah, got it up there.
Yeah, he's the man. But Bostaff is, gosh, as you said it, you nailed it. Just really punches you in the face in a good way. I absolutely love the rhythm guitar. I love the drums too. Yes, kudos to Kyle on bass. It's gonna be a workout. Touring. I do, and I love the idea. I love how they say it's kind of based off the saying, idle hands to do the devil's work. And they're basically saying, do the devil's work, use your idle hands and do the devil's work. I think that's pretty cool in a evil themed way. Otherwise, honestly, I'm not sure I like the lyrics. I love that. Play and the name of the song and how that works. I don't. The rest of the lyrics, I feel a little bit wanting, and I think it's because I'm such a huge fan of Jeff Hanneman's lyrics from Slayer.
Right.
I say this all the time, but I think Slayer lyrics, yes, evil and all that fun stuff, but they're poetic. As an English major and as a guy who took maybe more poetry classes than I've wanted to take, the imagery of Jeff Hanneman that he produces it is so impressive to me. The example I always use is "Confetti of Flesh" in one of their songs. I can't remember which one.
That's pretty strong, that is, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's imagery. That's what you want with your. At least that's what I enjoy.
Sure.
As imagery through writing, especially when it comes to poetry or songs. And so I miss that here. I think otherwise it's like, retribution, vengeance and all that stuff. Those are kind of heavy-handed words that don't have the imagery that you got with Jeff Hanneman, say. That's I think my only criticism of the lyrics. The other piece is the solos actually I thought were a little messy.
I mean, I quite like hearing that, that it isn't totally slick, that there is humanity going on there. And there is,
and I enjoy sloppy solos too sometimes. Sloppy is a bad word, but I do I like dirty solos sometimes, and Brent Hines does that sometimes. Also. But I do have a preference though, and I'm using Brent Hines as an example. Brent Hines on Emperor of Sand is pristine and not sloppy, and I prefer that. Yeah. Over the sloppy Brent, even though I have a respect for it, and you want to get a little dirty sometimes. I think my preference, this is just me, Bring your testimony to the table. I like the pristine stuff.
That's definitely something that grabs my ear when that's happening. The absolute precision and the note perfect timing. And it's certainly very true. A lot of Mastodon's music, it is very precise, isn't it? It's really, really metered. And I suppose that the king of sloppy guitar playing would have to, for me, would have to be Jimmy Page, because the term tight but loose was formed to describe Led Zeppelin, wasn't it? And he's the master of that, falling behind and going ahead, that kind of thing. And somebody else has carried that forward, actually. Josh Homme, Queens of the Stone Age, had that kind of stumbling forward kind of thing going on, which I love that. And that's been developed throughout their career. But I think when you're considering that the part of a continuum of a band is to keep a lot of things familiar, not necessarily safe, but working with new people as well is going to open out different avenues, isn't it? I'm sure these guys must have jammed together in all sorts of different scenarios, but it's interesting. It would be interesting to see some interviews maybe with the band and hear how they're taking on board the idea of working with, you know, new musicians and what that's going to be like in a live scenario, you know. So there's a lot going on.
As far as the vocals, and that's his name is Mark Osageda. I think I'm saying that right. From Death Angel. I love his vocals. I think even though I'm not crazy about the lyrics, I love his vocals. The only thing that's weird about it is I'm expecting to hear Tom Araya, Slayer.
Yeah.
I'm hearing those riffs and I'm expecting to hear Tom. So it's a little bit of a mind shift to be like, hey, this is not Slayer. This is a new band.
Yeah, gotcha.
So that I had to get through that. But once I got through that, Osageda, man, I think he's got a great scream. And you can still, it might be hard at times, but you can still understand what he's saying.
Yeah, definitely.
I think. Yeah.
It's interesting that is how you respond in that way, that you know Slayer so well and you recognize Kerry's style and his riff structure and all that, and the way that he places his guitars in the mix, and etc. And then there's an expectation that, well, that could be a new Slayer track, but then something comes out of left field like a new vocalist and adds to the mix. Is that something that you find often? Is that an appealing thing to you, that there is something new going on, that it does not confound your expectations, but it does shift your expectations a little bit?
Is it an appealing thing? I think at first it's not, because your mind naturally wants to go to what I think it's familiar with and knows, and so it'll take some time. But after, I think it is appealing, yes, after you kind of get through that stage.
When you process.
And yeah, I definitely, by the end of the song, I'm like, I love his vocals. Mm-hmm. Like, I think he's great. I think he's probably the perfect, I think they found the perfect guy. That's another tidbit maybe we should share, is they talked, Kerry King and Phil Anselmo of Pantera.
Right.
They were talking, he was going to do it. But Kerry King said, as much as I love Phil, like they're very good friends, as much as he loves him, he just didn't think he was right.
Is that a personality thing or a music thing, do you think?
Well, no, I think just the style of vocals. And I don't know. I mean, it's hard to kind of shift what we just heard and maybe plug in Phil's voice. But I don't know if I'm able to do it, but if I am able at all, I feel like it would sound cool. But I didn't think, Kerry said he didn't feel right. Just musical style, vocal style. he didn't
Gosh.
think it was right. Not a personality thing. But then, you know, you got to think too. Pantera's killing it with their this tour with Zach Wilde and
Right.
Charlie
Yeah.
Benante.
Yeah.
They're killing it. So I don't see that stopping
No,
anytime
but
soon.
I mean, just another little aside on that personality possibility. I think, you know, you can be very, very close friends with somebody and still deal with the fact that they've got a massive ego. And
Yeah.
and what amazes me is I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, it's amazing how our brains process all of this information. You've got your history of fandom with Slayer, which is locking into how your mind is processing the new material that you're hearing, and it's triggering all sorts of little synaptic connections with memory and history and emotion. And I'm doing this the same thing, but from a different direction, because I don't have those connections. I have connections which are of a perhaps a maybe a less focused nature, because they're coming more from my feelings of a sensibility of musical history and where heavy metal comes from in the first place, and how it leads to these points and these genres of metal. That's something that fascinates me deeply, is how the mind works when we're getting off on music, basically, you know, because it's triggering responses and releases of hormones that are making us feel good. For one thing, that is something that, you know, is very much it's a deep factor of how we appreciate aural stimulation, isn't it? You know, so once again, there's a lot going on.
Let me ask you this: of the big four, do you have an order of which you like them? Of Metallica, Anthrax, Megadeth, Slayer.
The one I'm most familiar with is Metallica, and that probably, like a lot of latter day Metallica fans, that was kicked off by the Black Album and Enter Sandman, because that really triggered my melodic sensibilities. As far as being able to create a hierarchy or say which I prefer, I just have not listened to enough of any of those bands to really give an honest. It would be dishonest of me to try and create some kind of, you know, false sensibility of what I think would be my choice, because I just don't know them well enough. That said, it's a challenge to me to start listening to more of those bands and seeing how, because for me, I'm of the age where I need more than just the music per se. I've got to have that sort of deeper understanding of where they're coming from, what their musical influences are, and that I'm interested in the bigger story of music in general. But my difficulty these days, Jesse, is just finding the time to listen to music, even the stuff that I know, or the bands that I know well, and they've got new things come out, and I desperately want to listen to it. It's really hard to find the time to do so. You know, there's so much. One of the things is there's so much media calling for our attention, isn't there? You know, and that's that to the degree that has become, you know, that's become a bit of a cliche now. Oh, I can't focus on one thing because I've got to do another. Or I just started a WhatsApp group with my mates who I saw yesterday, and I'm going, wait a minute, this is fun, but it's taking up a lot of time. Okay, and it was my instigation, because I said, lads, we must see more of each other, because we hadn't seen each other for a while. You know, we must keep in touch a lot more. And everybody went, yeah, you're absolutely right. So my mate Andy started the WhatsApp group, and now it's something that's sucking the life out of me. That's a little bit strong.
Well, if he watches this, he'll get the hint. It's not really a hint. It's pretty direct.
He's a smart guy. He'll know that I'm taking the. So I have no hierarchy of those bands in my mind, apart from, as I say, I'm most familiar with Metallica. So I
It's not
don't
a
know.
requirement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm coming from the outside, really, as far as the more extreme metal is concerned.
I mean, Mastodon is the very pinnacle, the Mount Everest to me, because and this is what I was speaking of texting or DMing. This is what I was DMing you the other day. Like I feel like Mastodon is radical metal. It is radical what
Mm,
they do because it's not, as Warren Lee said when we talked to him about Mastodon. You can't. You, I mean, how do you categorize it?
mm.
And
It's
I think now I think you categorize it by calling them radical metal.
That's fine by me. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Why not? I mean, what's wrong with us, you and I, from the background of what we're doing, actually choosing to describe what they do as a new genre of metal with regard to how we see them fitting into the pantheon of that music? I think that's perfectly valid, don't you? That we consider that they are radical metal, and there are probably other bands who fit well within that, like Gojira and Baroness, etc.
Yeah, I mean, you could say maybe progressive metal, which is also somewhat accurate, but it's not. It's not always progressive and metal. Sometimes it's just progressive,
Yeah,
uh,
definitely.
and sometimes it's just a good old song that doesn't have any palm muting and doesn't have anything fancy,
No, no,
any
double
tricky licks.
yeah, absolutely. One of the things with Mastodon's music for me is that I certainly, from my position, can hear and see to a great degree what their influences are and have been. I can hear Thin Lizzy, I can hear Rush, I can hear Black Sabbath, particularly in Brent's vocals. I know he's been compared with Ozzy, on quite a number of occasions because he's definitely got that nasally, uncontrolled thing going on. And with regard to Brent's vocals as well, I think they're equal to his guitar playing. They're both right up there. So
Yeah.
progressive metal is definitely a description that we can use to describe Mastodon. But I think it's more than that, because there are punk influences, there are classic rock influences, there are other metal influences, and that all comes together to make something which is a bit new in my regard, with regard to where metal is now, and having naming those bands once again. Some of the bands that they've toured with, Gojira particularly. There's almost a pop music sensibility going on there as well. Yeah, I think there's a whole lot of new stuff going on with these bands. Obviously, it's been developing over the last 20 or 30 years or so, because Mastodon have got that time scale now, haven't they? They've been around a while now.
Well, like a couple of obsessed Mastodon fans, we were reacting to a different band's song and went straight to Mastodon, as is perfectly okay. Mastodon, if you're listening, you're radical metal, baby.
Yeah,
Radical
yeah.
metal.
Do you hear them?
This is your channel.
Yeah, that's the message that we're giving you, and you absolutely have the platform to create that and bring that forward. And well, another thing I've got to talk about is just really looking forward to hearing some new Mastodon music, because Bill's been talking about that. I think in little corners, little whispers are going on here and there that he's been working on new material. Although I think we can gather from previous interviews that he's done is he never stops. He's always got music on his mind, and he'll be down in the studio recording new riffs. So that's something very much to look forward to.
Huston's Graham came out, what was it?
2021.
October 2021. So
Yeah,
it's 2024, baby.
I know. It's about time, isn't it, really? Would it be true to say that the first Slayer album you heard back in the day is very similar to the Slayer that you would be listening to, from their latest releases? I don't get the feeling that there's much of that kind of the development that Mastodon have gone through, because they've really grown and changed.
That's a fascinating question, because one of the beauties of Slayer to me is they didn't change. And so as a fan, and I don't know if there's wiggle room to change with when you're Slayer. I'm not sure how to articulate that, but when you're working in that parameters of that fast, heavy palm muting, punk influence, I'm not sure there's a door open to get too far outside of that. Mastodon, I wonder how but then Mastodon, they're so heavy in the beginning. But somehow they opened up a window and then they opened up a door and now they got multiple houses
Yeah,
in
my
real
house has
estate.
many mansions. Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's getting biblical now.
So as it should. But Dave Assanon was able to do it. And I think it probably was a combination, even as heavy as it was in the beginning. I mean, Blood Mountain's a good example. Blood Mountain, there's still a lot of melody stuff. And Leviathan, super heavy, but you still have Aqua Dementia, Sleeping Giant. That's what I was trying to think of.
Right.
Sleeping
Okay.
Giant, I think, is maybe my one of my favorite songs ever. Do we need to say anything to wrap up the?
Yeah, one of the things I want to have a little bit of focus on is the visual language. But as far as the visuals for this visualizer are concerned, yeah, it's kind of what I would have expected, really. A demon head sinking into a burning miasma and tortured souls wailing in the night.
Yeah, it's cool. It's definitely again. I don't think they would deny it. It is sort of it is a little different because it's not Slayer, but it is a continuation of the spirit of Slayer, which is
I can see that for sure.
Some evil shit.
Yes, maybe going down. Yeah, but once again the whole sort of history of heavy metal iconography. The one thing that just springs to mind is, do you know an English rock band called Uriah Heep?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, they were probably in their day kind of progressive metal in a way back in the 70s. And I wouldn't be surprised to find that some of the Mastodon guys are Uriah Heep fans. But they had later on in their career, when the term heavy metal had really started to take over, Uriah Heep had an album called Abominog, which is great. That don't mess with the Abominog. But partly that idea of what that demon looks like comes from an old 1960s British science fiction horror movie, Night of the Demon. Whether you've ever seen it. Super spooky, classic British horror movie, in which you see the demon who's causing all the ruckus sort of towards the end of the film, and it almost takes the steam out of the rest of the film because it's a little bit hilarious, So if you look at Night of the Demon, you'll see that. I'll flash these stills up on screen actually when I'm editing it, because it's you've got Night of the Demon, Abominog, then I think Kerry King's new band. We like our devil's horns, don't we? I'd like to know who the artist is for the artwork that they're using in that visualizer.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't think it credits the visualizer. Here it is.
Okay.
Mara Yena.
You do tend to automatically associate with that stylistically with a male kind of attitude, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I say, Ellie Donlan's tattooing. She's got some demonic stuff going down there, definitely. I think perhaps we're getting close to winding up.
Yeah. Well, what would you give the song at the end of the day? I think, despite my criticisms, I'm going to give it. I don't know if we should maybe come up with our own rating system.
Maybe we should. Yeah, maybe it's Or you've got the sparklers going off behind you now.
It does that when I do this. Look.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. I wondered what it was that caused that.
It's a Google Meet thing.
Yeah. Thanks, Google. That's great. But maybe we should give it is it a horns or how many?
Look at that.
Lasers. Okay.
I give it two horns up. I think, despite my criticism, and I do have some. It still equals 2 horns up.
I'm going to go with you on that because I think it will. It's you would agree with me that that's going to be very appealing to Slayer fans. They're going to really like it. I don't know whether it's going to win any new fans, but then maybe it would do because of other members of the band. Because you know, Kyle's been in bands previously who were quite successful, weren't they?
Oh yeah, Hell Yeah was a big one.
Yeah, exactly. So his followers of Hell Yeah are going to come across and check it out, and maybe it'll just draw in a bigger crowd. Maybe, you know.
Yeah. Well, and the touring, and maybe folks like you who never really got into Slayer, and you go see them, say they do get to England again, and tour. Maybe if they continue the tour over to England with Kerry King, Mastodon, and Lamb of God. Maybe you hear the whole set, and become a fan. So they might get the message, just like any band touring with other bands. The fans sometimes will bleed over.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how their music develops and how they cohere as a band when they start touring and all of that. I assume they're going to be playing some live shows. So that you know, that's the next stage for them, isn't it? To see how it grows and carries on and stays part of the continuum of all of the members' careers in metal. So interesting to follow that up in time, and also it's a little bit outside of my sphere, so it's a good little dip in my toes into a more extreme metal genre for me.
And next time we will do Eamon Amarth with
and we'll be able to get the Tolkien references in. So okay, let's call it a day. All good, all done. Nice one.
Cool, man.
See you later.